This is Command Sergeant Major Retired Dave Eustace, and I am here with Staff Sergeant Knight from the great state of Connecticut, 2019 Directors 1. It is very awesome to be with you and really hoping to learn how you are such a good recruiter. So just to get things rolling, could you just kind of give your guard recruiting story for?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Sergeant Knight. I am with the Connecticut Army National Guard. I originally started with the Florida Army National Guard. At the time, they had something called a GD Plus program. I had dropped out of school my senior year, and I had 6 months left, and I was working at Wendy's flipping burgers. I was like, this is not the life I had intended for myself. So I had heard about the National Guard doing something called a GD Plus program where they could actually not only help you get your GED, but they also paid you while you were going there. So I attended the program back in 2007, graduated, went on to my unit with the Florida National Guard, deployed with them. After about, I think it was about 5.5 years, moved to Connecticut, did about almost a year with the Connecticut Guard, then got out. Had a recruiter come knocking on my door. Hey, we're looking for female drill sergeants. I was like, oh, that's something I've always wanted to do. So I decided to come back in. I actually joined the reserves, was in the reserves for about 1.5 years. Left the reserves, came back to the Guard. They offered me a full-time AGR position, working with supply. So I did that for a little while, met up with someone named Sergeant Major Bernard, who was like, you would make a phenomenal recruiter. And I was like, no, I've heard the horror stories of recruiting. I am good. So I didn't do anything with it. I had a few other people approach me. They're like, listen, you would be a phenomenal recruiter. So finally, I was like, you know what? I will submit a packet. I already have an AGR job. If I don't get it, I don't get it. So I actually went through, made it through, and actually was accepted on the first try. So since then, I've been in recruiting for, oh my goodness, this is my 4th year. Rookie of the year, my first year. Directors 54, went to compete regionally. Won top recruiter of the region, then went to compete nationally, won top recruiter of the nation. I then moved into a squad leader position. So I did a little bit of leadership, understanding that aspect of recruiting. My fiance is actually deployed right now. So I've stepped down as a squad leader and I'm back on the streets. So, which is, I love being here. This is where I love actually doing this. So I'm back on the streets now and so far so good.
Good deal. Well, that's quite a story. That GD Plus program, that was a neat program. So we know one person that it really worked out for. Very good. So that's great. So I'm very curious, and I asked this question of high producing recruiters in this way on purpose. Why aren't other recruiters as successful as you?
Can I be very honest?
Sure. Yeah, that's what we're looking for.
So I tell people all the time, I tell the young new recruiters that are coming in, I tell recruiters that I've been working with, you will make mission if you are coming in and you are doing your job 9 to 5. If you are making the phone calls, if you're out in your communities, you will make mission. Those who exceed mission are the individuals going above and beyond just the basic standards of recruiting. So in my opinion, especially once COVID hit, a lot of recruiters were in the, what do I do now? And didn't really know what to do. So they're falling behind rather than myself. I started looking towards the future. Any good marketing company or salesperson always looks to the future. So I was already thinking 10 steps ahead of, okay, where is this going to go? I know we're going to start wearing masks. So I was pitching to my command, my marketing, we need masks, we need masks. They were throwing it down. They said, no, no, no. Finally, they jumped on board. So we started getting masks to hand out. So that's what they need to be doing, is looking 10 steps ahead. What can I do? This is where it's going.
Well, and it gets overlooked is the work.
Yeah.
Like
it's a lot of work.
Yeah. I've not come across a high producing recruiter that doesn't work very hard. And that requires no talent to work hard. So I'm kind of curious, like you've been around in a few different positions in the AGR program. And so what are your thoughts about developing your recruiting area? What's your approach to it?
When I first came in, it was pretty much the horror stories of being thrown to the wolves. No one really trained me on how to own my area, what to do in my area. It was pretty much like, hey, go out and see your town hall, go to your schools. That was pretty much it. So I had to learn on my own. A key takeaway that I would tell a lot of recruiters, whether you're struggling or you're new, is if you are not enjoying what you're doing, especially in your communities, it's going to show. So if you have a local Dave and Buster's and you're going in there to play video games, and I know it sounds crazy, but you're going to meet people and they're going to see that you're having a good time. And when you're talking about the National Guard, you're actually going to be saying positive things because you're in an environment where you're actually having fun.
Yeah, I think it's impossible. It's impossible to attract people when you're not enjoying yourself. Also, as a recruiter, we don't enlist somebody every day. So we got to think about that payoff because it doesn't happen every day. And that's what we're striving for every day, is to get that next enlistment, to provide that next opportunity. And we don't get 50 of them a year, very, very few recruiters do. But I like the thought of just being in your area. I'm glad you mentioned that, because a lot of people retreated when COVID started into, well, we only got social media and cold calling. That's all we got. And there's people out there, right?
That's when your community needs you the most. I don't really ask for permission, and I know sometimes I probably should, but I don't. So whenever I see my community needs stuff, we had food drives going on, and this is way before other recruiters started going out there and doing things. I was doing this when COVID first started happening. I was out there not only helping deliver food, but I was me and my kids were baking cookies. I delivered almost 300 cookies to the individuals who were handing out the food.
Yeah.
So that's when your community needs you. That's when you need to be out there.
And there's 1,000 opportunities, but you don't see them when you're in your office. So what do you do for accountability for yourself to ensure that you're doing the prospecting daily and weekly so you can have enough people coming in that you can talk to them about joining the Guard?
I know a lot of times we talked about funnels, you hear it all the time from recruiting, your other recruiters from the battalion, like make sure your funnel's full. And it really is important, like having that funnel. Like I said, I was struggling in the beginning of the year because I completely drained my funnel dry, pushing everything I had for my entire squad. So filling that funnel is important. And the only way you're going to do that is getting out and prospecting. And you have to have that discipline of, yeah, it's a bad day, but I still need to have something in the funnel, because if you're not working something in the beginning of the month, you're probably not going to have anything at the end.
Yeah. I like that you said discipline, because you just don't know. You don't know who the next conversation could be, your next enlistment. So it's there, but if you don't have the conversation, the next enlistment is going to be hard to find.
Yeah.
And not working stuff at the beginning of the month and not having that enlistment at the end of the month is kind of a big deal, because what you see at the end of the month, right? Like right now, people are throwing the Hail Mary.
Yeah.
Right. And so they're doing the packet and they're talking to their boss and saying, I got this person. But in their gut, they know that person is very marginal, and it would be a miracle if they got in. But they spend all that time and effort on that person for show. So
yeah,
people like you don't do that. So I'm really interested in what your thoughts are, because I preach this all the time. I'm just kind of wondering. So you've set up an interview and somebody's coming to talk to you, or you're going to them. What is in your head about what is going to happen?
Oh, they're going to enlist. I already put it. I have the mentality of, if you see it, you say it, it will happen. So I had the mentality of whoever's coming into my office, they're going to enlist. It may not be this week, but they will at some point. As long as they are qualified, never take a no. I tell people that I work with, I can turn a no into a maybe and a maybe into a yes.
Yeah, I just believe that, especially now, right? That young people would be very contented to be dialed into their phone 24/7, right? So
Yeah.
we have them committed to coming into your office, and they actually come into your office. That's a giant step for this
Yeah.
group of people. And I just firmly believe they're coming in to join. And if you have that, sometimes it's probably not true, but if you believe that, you have a totally different attitude about where you're going to get in that interview.
I feel like a lot of recruiters, if someone's coming into your office and they're not enlisting, if they're qualified. So if something comes in, they come in, you've done your applicant over the phone, it never fails. You're going to have those onesie twosie applicants that come in, they're like, oh yeah, I forgot to tell you that I have this. And you're like, oh yeah, okay. But for the ones who are qualified that come in your office, if they have not enlisted, you need to have some reflection on yourself. Like, okay, let me think back to the conversation we had. What did I do? Because honestly, it's probably on the recruiter. You failed somewhere to finish closing with that applicant.
Yeah, I really do think that that's probably been a practice over your career, right? Like if it didn't work, well, what did I do wrong instead of what's wrong with that person? That takes a lot of emotional intelligence to say, okay, they're not a yes, this is an awesome deal. They should be a yes, they're qualified. What did I do? What did I not do right? I'm also interested in how you close, because you'd be surprised at the number of newer recruiters be like, well, how do you ask them to join? How do you ask them? So
I like to think of myself as a chameleon, and I tell recruiters there is no one technique that is going to work with every single applicant. You can try this. So, hey, so where do you stand? 50-50? And you could try different techniques, but it's really knowing the person who is in front of you, from doing your research on the person through social media before they get there, and then reading the room while they're there. And that's how you're going to know, how should I close this? Whether it's an emotional connection, whether it's through humor, that's how you're going to learn how to close. So there's no one set way on closing.
Well, that's kind of a little bit of nuanced point that you kind of brushed over, though, is like preparing for the interview, right? Preparing for it is a whole bunch of things. Like you're going back to why they set the interview, right? And you mentioned, going over their social media. Well, that's you really know what they care about, so if they're jumping out of airplanes, they're doing hiking and things like that, our adventure is probably something you're selling on that day. Or if they're posting that they made the honor roll, the education might be something that so I think that is a really good point, that stomp on the floor, it's going to be on the task. New recruiters, you can use.
Yeah, definitely. And it also helps you, because I can tell you, I can relate to almost every single individual who has came in my office in some sort of way, whether it was we came from the same background, I worked at the same job they had, something, there's some sort of connection there. And that's also going to help those new recruiters who are a little nervous on starting the interview or closing the interview, of reverting back to, hey, what was that connection we had, to make them feel comfortable with making that close.
So I remember you were at one of my events and we were talking about processing, and of all the recruiters in the last 4 years that I've come across, you were the most lunatic type processor and I say that as a term of endearment. So I would definitely like to hear, like, what is your approach to processing, and what are your thought processes?
So
Also,
I get,
how long should it take from time you meet them to the time you get them in the garden?
the book answer to what I think every battalion leader wants to hear is they should be on the floor that same week. Like from the day you meet them to enlistment, it should be 1 week. I do not believe that's the case with every single person. I really don't. And I would like to say it's the case, but I don't. As far as how I'm handling it, I do prioritize, and every applicant that comes in my office, I let them know how valuable my time is. And I have an entire filing system on my wall, and I show them like, hey, these are the applicants that I'm working. All right. If you're not serious and you're not ready to do this, your folder is going down here. All right. And then they're like, oh, no, I really want to do this. So it's like a visual. They see me putting that folder at the top, like, okay, you're ready to do this. All right, now you're on the top. I work with my computer facing towards my applicants because I know there's a lot of horror stories with recruiters and dishonesty, and they hear it all the time from their family, their friends, social media, YouTube, everything. You hear them, all these negative things about recruiters. So I work with my monitor facing my applicants. This way they can see everything. It's black and white. I go from showing them the vacancy roster, and I use when it was pretty accurate, the Mill Suite training. So it shows those applicants that are, hey, I really want to leave around this time. I show them, hey, you want that, 35 mic. Well, guess what? I have one on my vacancy, right? There's only 5 seats available during these times. And I tell them, this is not just the Connecticut Guard competing for these seats. This is the entire Army National Guard. So now they understand that, okay, if I want this to happen, I need to move my feet. So use the tools that you have, and being transparent, black and white with these applicants, it's going to help you because it gives them that visual of, okay, I can see this.
Yeah, and I think kind of what you're talking about is expectation management. If they think it's like Burger King, then they will work with you like it is Burger King.
Yeah, exactly.
So what are some high points? So like they're good to go, they want to join, you're going to get them to MAPS. What do you focus on to make sure they have a successful trip to MAPS and go in a civilian and come out a soldier?
That's where you as a recruiter need to be making sure you're doing your due diligence. If you have someone fully qualified, ready to go, you need to make sure you are doing everything to ensure that that applicant knows. I let them know exactly what's going to happen. I walk them through, hey, you're going to go in, you're going to go through the scanner, you're going to empty out your pockets, make sure your cell phone's turned off. You're going to go, they're going to take a picture of you, do your fingerprints. I walk them through every single step. So this way, when they get there, they're like, Sergeant Knight has already told me all this stuff. I'm good. And I asked them, I'm like, hey, so how was MEPS? I would say probably 7 out of 10 times, they're like, oh, Sergeant Knight, it's not as bad as what you said it was. So yeah. I make sure they're fully prepared.
And that's really important. The reason why I asked that question is it is very difficult to find that one that is both qualified and is committed to joining, but we have a tendency to do a half job on the processing side. And then on the back end, when it doesn't work out, we say, well, it was MAPS' fault.
No. Now, if you do your job right, that applicant should be going in there, even if, and I've heard recruiters say, oh, well, he doesn't want to join because he can't get his top pick job. No, you failed him as a recruiter because you should have went in there with, and I've had applicants, hey, number 1 pick didn't work, number 2 pick didn't work, number 3 pick that's what's on the table right now. And they've looked at me and they've told me, Sergeant Knight, I trust you. Do you think I should do this? Yes, I do. Because this is why you are looking to join. All right. And this job is not going to stop you from reaching that goal. All right. So recruiters just go in there and they forget. They get so hyped up on, oh, I got somebody on there. I got somebody on the floor. They're ready to go. And then they forget all the little details that could just have everything fall apart.
Yeah, MEPS is there to disqualify people. That is the,
Oh, yeah.
yeah,
That's what I
that,
tell my applicants. I tell them every single time they are there to disqualify you. That is their job.
so you don't have to tell me all the details because I remember something you told me in New Orleans. You don't have to tell me that. We'll let people wonder about that part of the MEPS brief. But I'm guessing, and this is kind of the profile, because I've talked to a lot of women recruiters in the Chiefs 54 group that I had. And one of the things I think is a differentiator is the service after the sale. It is much more significant with women recruiters. So I would be interested to hear about what you do in that regard and the impact that it has.
So I typically bite off more than I can chew because I love every single applicant that comes in here. They are like part of my family. I've gone from helping kids build resumes, helping them find jobs. I recently had a soldier, her dad had passed away. I drove 2 hours to the funeral and delivered flowers on my own time. I have that connection and I build that connection from day one, but I'm constantly following up. I have an entire binder where I will go through and I do a check. Okay, have I called this person? And then I make notes on how they're doing, how is class going? How are your family? How are your brothers? So I keep that binder just to kind of keep myself in check to make sure I'm still reaching out to all the soldiers I've enlisted.
That's amazing, because I've sold that quite a few times in recruiter training. Like I would consider it like a portfolio.
Yes.
These are people that you've worked with, and you have lots of success stories with those individuals. And if someone that's an access point wonders if you're the type of person that they want to be in front of students, I mean, you have that binder of all these success stories. And I think that if more recruiters did that, they would have much more credibility.
And that's extra. When you're out and you're prospecting and you're getting those new leads, that's efforts that you're doing. Now, when you're taking care of your soldiers, I say soldiers because it's after they've enlisted, right? That after sales, not only are you going out and prospecting and getting leads, but they're doing it for you also. So now you have it coming from both sides, filling that funnel. So if you continuously take care of them, they're going to continuously take care of you.
And that has had a big impact during the COVID period.
Yeah. Yes.
Taking care of people, the number one source of enlistments for the high producing recruiters by a lot is referrals.
That's primarily where mine come from.
So it does pay off. What could a male soldier do differently in that regard? Because we like to say that we're all the same, and maybe this isn't politically correct, but I think there's some touch points there that I've only heard from women recruiters.
All right, so I actually took some notes on I'm a big audio person. I love my audiobooks and my hard books. If you have a job, all right, this is your job. You need to do the research and find ways to make yourself better at the job. So one thing, this works for women, but if you are a male and you are looking for a good audiobook as far as sales, there's a book called Women Make the Best Salesman. And it's literally giving you all those techniques as women, why we do so well at sales.
I think that's a good nugget. That's another one. Check it out, you dudes out there. Because I think there is a tendency to move on, right? You solve that problem and then you move on. Whereas a lot of the women recruiters, they will say that same phrase that you said, is that these soldiers are like family to me. And, that's significant. That's significant being a part of someone's life to that degree. And they feel like, I need to take care of my recruiter, Sergeant Knight, and tell other people about this great program they got in the National Guard. It's an incredible thing.
You do not want to be that recruiter that one of your soldiers is asked, hey, so who's your recruiter? And they say, yeah, I don't remember who my recruiter was. You do not want to be that recruiter.
Oh, that's funny. That is funny. So you mentioned social media earlier. So I'm wondering what your approach to it is, and the prospecting side of it. How much do you think you're getting on the prospecting side on social media?
I'm going to be completely honest with you. Social media has not been my friend. I know our command and everyone's like social media, but I'm still a firm believer in the cold calls still work. Calling your school list, it still works. Getting out in your communities, it still works. I'm still using social media, but I'm not one of those. The younger recruiters do great. They do phenomenal with it. Getting on there, keeping up with their posts. I'm not the best with that. But I'm constantly trying to, learn. I've bought books on how to, social media through Facebook and things like that, how to create pages. So I'm slowly trying to educate myself on social media, just because I know if I'm doing very well now, if I'm adding in that additional resource, I'm going to be unstoppable.
Well, I think that you kind of don't give yourself enough credit in that regard, because the data mining part is totally overlooked. Like getting information on individuals using social media. It's like intel and preparation of the battlefield, so, and you've been able to use that to get enlistments. And I think that side of it totally doesn't get played up, where like doing a post at a certain time of day on the right platform really does get played up. And at my high performer seminars, we don't count very many enlistments from social media.
No, I've learned to adjust. I know a lot of the schools, we can't get in there. So we're doing Zoom meetings. So we actually set up an entire room that is for Zoom calls. I created something called a game of life, and it was a giant it was a giant map, and it was the game of life, but took you down a path where you had to choose college or career, and you were military or non-military, just like the game of life. And you're going through and it's showing these kids, hey, when you get ready to buy a house, the benefits of being in the military versus not. Now this year, I've done it every year and they absolutely love it. The schools love it. I couldn't do it this year. I couldn't get in. So I went on and I created a virtual game of life. So I actually went on PowerPoint, did tons of research on coding and everything else, so I could actually create this virtual game of life to do with my schools that I do every year.
Well, people are going to be asking about that. People are going to be asking for a copy of that. That sounds like a very good tool, that especially now, where if I'm a teacher, I'm pretty tired of this program. So I would be, if you can show me something like that, I'd be super interested in seeing it as a teacher. So that's awesome. Well, you've had a pretty successful career thus far in recruiting. And so what do you think your secret sauce is as a recruiter? You've been directors 1 and chiefs 54 and reached to the top, and you still have drive. So what is it?
You got to want to do this, and you got to make sure you're doing it for the right reasons. I firmly believe in your product. I've worked in sales way before recruiting, where I was at a mall kiosk trying to sell herbal packs. I had to do my research and I had to believe in my product so I could sell my product. Same thing in recruiting. If you do not believe in the National Guard, it's going to be really hard for you to sell it. And that's what you're doing. You're selling a product. So you need to, if you're not truly believing in what you're doing, it's going to be really hard. So you need to remind yourself why you're doing this. If you're doing it for that paycheck, you might make mission. All right. But those who are going to make mission every year, who exceed the mission, those are the individuals who actually believe in this product and are going out there, and they know every single individual they meet can benefit from it.
Well, that's a big deal. I mean, that last statement is a really big deal, is that everyone can benefit from it. And that's why we shouldn't be fearful of advocating for the National Guard. It is not for some people, for sure. It's not for some people. And in the military, we do a lot of stupid things, like any other thing. But when you're weighing out the positives versus the negatives, it's just overwhelming in the Guard's favor. So I think that's interesting, a belief in the product too. And I mean, your story is you got kind of a nuanced program that right now it doesn't exist anymore. And you've been able to have a giant impact on your state's Guard because that program existed and you got your opportunity. So what tools do you use for time management?
Audiobooks and planners. So I have a long list of audiobooks that I've listened to, and they're like time management, because I found myself overwhelmed with trying to balance home life. I have 3 kids. So 3 kids, balancing that with recruiting, I don't think I was sleeping at all. So I was like, all right, I got to do something. So I started listening to audiobooks on time management, really sticking to my planners. And, that really helped me out a whole lot. It also, you can use it as a tool. So I use my planner that the National Guard gives me every year. When I have an applicant come in and follow-up appointment, I open up that binder and I have all these names written in there and all these appointments. And they're like, oh, wow, like there's this many people wanting to join the Guard. Like, listen, this is the only time I have available because I'm booked solid. All right. And will I say that there are times where someone's name is written in there that I do not have an appointment, but it makes my binder look full? Yes.
Yeah. Well, I think it's like, you got to figure out what your thing is and how you're going to be organized. But it can't be nothing.
No.
So I noticed you got the whiteboard type calendar behind you.
Oh, I do. Filing systems, everything.
And I do think it is figuring out what is going to keep you on track. Especially as a new recruiter, everything is like a fire hose and there's so much that you don't know. Having a plan to make sure that you do recruiting one, you got to talk to people every day, even though that first enlistment might take you forever to figure out, it's going to be complicated, the first enlistment, that's how it goes. So with your success and all that we've talked about today, I think there's a lot that new recruiters or recruiters that are struggling could use. But what would your words of wisdom be right now to someone that is struggling, that really wants to be successful at this job, but is probably on the wrong side of their leadership right now because of where they're at year to date?
I would tell them to call me. Reach out to your other recruiters, ones that are succeeding, and ask them for their advice, especially in your local area where you've maybe had a recruiter who previously worked in that area. They're going to know it. You need to be communicating with those other recruiters, getting their ideas, their thoughts. But sometimes I have recruiters call me from all over. I'm from Texas, Tennessee, New Hampshire, all over. And they call me, they're like, hey, Sir Knight, I'm struggling with this. And I love it because I'm like, okay, my time feels valuable. And if I can help you, and then they give me that follow-up phone call, Sir Knight, it worked. Thank you. So reach out to those individuals, and it doesn't have to necessarily be your state. I know there's a Facebook page where there's a lot of recruiters on there. So reach out to people.
Well, I've compared recruiting to the deployment that never ends. So there's not an end date to your time in recruiting, unless things are really bad. They might give you an end date, and there's a brotherhood that comes out of that. Like, we've all been through this, and it's a struggle, and having the victories and having some success. And I think that a lot of recruiters would be surprised that high performing recruiters like yourself are so willing to help. Like you mentioned, you do get quite a few calls. I don't really have any other questions of you. I had the opportunity to come across you one other time, and I think you're a terrific recruiter, a great example. And I really think what you put out today is going to be useful to other recruiters. So I do appreciate it.
And I think you can find me on social media. I'm pretty sure we have like a whole justice squad on Instagram. So if there's recruiters that have questions, try to find me.
Awesome.
And I'd be happy to pick other people's brains as well. I can always learn.
Good deal. Well, I hope to see you at one of my upcoming events.
I'm hoping we start doing some more with the traveling and everything else. I was just telling the guys that the program we went to with you guys is one of the best ones I'd ever been to. I was like, we need to do those.
Yeah, that's fun. Being around other high producing recruiters, it's just awesome. So thank you very much. And we'll conclude our interview today and stay after it and get that mission delivered.
All right, sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you.